Hi, my name is Donna Hampton. I have lived in Alexandria for 30 years. I have a 21-year-old son. He's my only child. I have been a single mom for 16 years. Well, I say 16 since he was 4 years old. Um, I grew up in a little town called Pumpkin Center, Louisiana, in Tangipahoa Parish, and I came to Central Louisiana in 1993 to Louisiana College to obtain my bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I went on to get a master's degree in counseling at the University of Louisiana in Monroe. And for about 30 years, as long as I've lived here actually, I have worked with children in the foster care system. I owned a private practice that worked with children of divorced families. I worked with children that were sexually traumatized from the ages of 2 to 10 in my private practice. And until recently, the last 4 years, I spent most of my time in the mental health field, either providing counseling services or operating programs in the nonprofit arena to help families and children. So I remember whenever I was told that I was pregnant. I was married, had been married for 5 years. In my last semester of graduate school, I was 28 years old and thought I had the flu. My husband and I at the time were very ambitious people. We were very career focused. We both grew up in a rural area, so we wanted our life to be different than what we grew up with. We lived in the city. We call Alexandria Pineville the city compared to where we grew up. Neither one of our families lived in this area, so my family lived 3 hours away, his family lived 2 hours away. And so we basically just had each other in this area. And when I found out that I was pregnant, it was during the summer, and I thought I had the flu. We were going on vacation, and I went to the doctor and I said, "Hey doc, I think I have the flu." And he said, "I think you're pregnant." And I was like, "I think you're crazy," because I was on contraception. And so pregnancy was not anywhere in my plan at this time. I needed to graduate from graduate school. I wanted to start a private practice. That was my plan in life, for me to have my own business. And nowhere did we really plan on having children. It wasn't in our plan. We were 5-year plan people. And so during the vacation, I had a miscarriage, and I called my OB and said, "Listen, this is what's happening." And he said, "As soon as you get back from your trip, you need to come straight to the doctor's office, and we'll do an ultrasound and see what's happening." And so he said, "But it sounds like you had a miscarriage." And I said, "Okay." So I was initially scared to death that I was pregnant, and then I was sad because I wasn't in a very short amount of time. So it was very emotional. My 10-year high school reunion was the same time. And so, that was a lot of other emotions as well. So, I found out I was pregnant before I went on vacation. I had a miscarriage on vacation, and then I had my 10-year high school reunion, and then we came back here and had the ultrasound, and the doc says, "Well, by the way, you were pregnant, but you're still pregnant. You did have a miscarriage. You were pregnant with twins." So it was a very emotional time for me. My life kind of stopped because I was living in Monroe. I was trying to finish my last semester of graduate school. I had a miscarriage, and I'm still pregnant, all in a very short amount of time. So going on through the pregnancy, I adapted. I'm a strong person. I pushed through. And I had my baby shower, and the night of my baby shower, I went, had a really high blood sugar and blood pressure, and developed preeclampsia. And so I had to go to the hospital. We had these special ultrasounds done in Lafayette during the pregnancy, and somehow in my mind I had thought I was having a 6-pound baby by the time he would have arrived. Unfortunately, he weighed 3 pounds and 9 ounces when he was born, and I went from having an induced labor to an emergency C-section because his cord was wrapped around his neck. So it just went from one experience to another, and it was not a very joyful pregnancy time, where all of my other friends had these experiences where pregnancy was good. You know, some of them having a healthy glow, but it was a struggle for me. But we pushed through it. He was born, and he stayed at the NICU unit for a month. He was actually released from the NICU unit to go home on his due date in February, and he weighed 4 pounds and he weighed 4 pounds when we brought him home. That too was very scary because nowhere in the pregnancy had we discussed about having to leave my child in the hospital for strangers to take care of, and that I couldn't see him or hold him whenever we wanted. We had to gown up, and it was just not the pregnancy or the birthing situation that I ever expected, and nobody really prepared me for that. But again, we got through it. After he came home, we had no clothes that fit him because he was a preemie. We had no bottles that would fit his mouth. He had a small suck reflex, so you know it was a struggle to even getting to take a bottle because his little jaw muscles weren't strengthened enough. We had preemie diapers. I mean, it was just an experience that I had no experience in. Nobody else in my family had experience in because they all had 7 to 8 pound babies, and he was tiny. You know, the good thing was that this was our first child, so we never had anything else to compare it to. And you know, it was very scary, but we had people that came to help. After he was born, he couldn't go to daycare. He had to go, to the NICU unit, outpatient on a regular basis. And so even after he was born, my whole life changed. Early steps came into my home because I was at risk for postpartum depression, which was something else that was added that we didn't talk about. Being a counselor, I knew about postpartum depression. I knew about depression. I knew about a lot of things as a counselor, working with children in the foster care system, knowing about healthy brain development. So I knew that it was really important to spend a lot of time with my child. I knew it was important to have support for myself, and that his outcomes were only gonna be as good as my mental health. So we had a person that came into my home 2 to 3 days a week and just offered support for me. She was there for whatever I needed, whether it was to help me fold laundry or just cry or to play with the baby, to take a nap. And it wasn't a family member because I didn't have family members here. My family couldn't come live with me. My husband's family couldn't come live with us. So I had to rely on outside resources to help us get through that period of time. we went through it. We got through that time period. He was eventually released from the NICU unit. He met all of his developmental milestones on track, and I honestly believe it was because of the support that came into my home and helped me get through that time period, which was very, very difficult. Um, it was difficult as a new mom. It was difficult as an older mother, an older mom. But it was even more difficult as a mental health counselor to admit that I needed help when I was on the career path to be the helper. Fast forward about 4 years later, my son's 4 years old. You know, we were trucking along. He was in daycare. We graduated from Calvary Daycare, starting pre-K, and we were parishioners at the cathedral, but we moved to Our Lady of Prompt Succor Church because they had a school. During that time, my husband and I became Catholic. We were raised Protestant, but was very drawn to the Catholic Church. And we started school at Our Lady of Prompt Succor in the pre-K program. And it was the summer prior to that my former husband decided that he no longer wanted to be a part of the family. So we got through a premature birth, and we were moving toward, you know, a different life, a life now as parents with an only child. And then my life changed significantly to become a single mom. And that journey has lasted until now. You know, my son is 21 years old. He's self-sufficient. So I feel like we made it. we made it. It was very hard. It was hard. Hard is the only word I'm going to use. It was hard. A lot changed. A lot was unknown. A lot happened, but we made it. Well, most of the time I cried, and just having people let me cry. They didn't offer suggestions that it's gonna be okay, you know, because every day was touch and go. There were other babies in the NICU unit that was 1 and 2 pounds, and they were dying, and it was scary. So just having people let me cry and let me sleep whenever we went home, because it was emotionally exhausting, and not be judgmental about not, you know, having a clean house. Not that my house was dirty or anything, but, you know, it was basically that I was crying and I was sleeping to be able to get up to go and do the next round of visits, and having people supportive to just being there for that time. I think that because we're always focusing on the needs of our children, we neglect the needs of ourselves. And it's very important that you take care of yourself before you can help take care of your child. It's kind of like when you need a life jacket. You can't help anybody unless you have your own life jacket on. The same thing with an oxygen mask. You can't help the next person next to you unless you have the oxygen yourself. And it's very hard to say, hey, I need help, and it's very hard to accept help when it's given. But the first thing I would say is to reach out for help. The first time that you think, oh, I don't need help, that's the time you need help. The first thought you have that says, oh, I can do this. No, you need help to do this. Okay? So, and it's okay to ask for help. Get the help. It's there. It's going to help not only you, but it's going to help your child in the long run. You may not see it right at the moment, but in the long run, you're going to be able to look back and say, thank God I took better care of myself.